We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
No one man can terrorize a whole nation unless we are all his accomplices. So said the legendary Edward R. Murrow about the junior senator from Wisconsin, Joseph McCarthy, in 1954. This denouncement brought about the end of 4 years of terror and paranoia. But are we witnessing a 21st century resurgence of this divisive and dangerous rhetoric? Welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's show, we talk McCarthyism making a comeback, a nation divided, and BLM super grift, and much more. I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to our listeners out in Evergreen, Alabama on WNWF 1470 AM and WPNS on 1140 AM. Thanks for being here. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. A MAGA extremist hiding behind every corner? Well, if you believe President Biden, that's just America today in the post-Trump era. In a series of divisive and dark pronouncements, the commander-in-chief appears ready to bring back the stain of McCarthyism to further his party's political prospects. But surely, Americans won't fall for it again, will they? Well, to figure out just how far down the path we're going with this, we're joined by longtime host of this here Liberty Nation radio show and senior political analyst for LibertyNation.com, Mr. Tim Donner. Thanks for coming in, Tim.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
So, Tim, as it says in Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. Are we seeing a resurgence of McCarthy-era persecutions?
Well, it's sort of a repeat of the 1950s in a sense, but it's also, and here's that word again, but it's true, unprecedented. We've never had a president attack an entire class of voters before. And we're not talking about a class of voters that's a few people or a few thousand or even a few million. You're talking about 74 million people that have effectively been demonized by the sitting president of the United States. That's never, ever happened before. Now, you take into account Donald Trump, and some would say, wait a minute, Donald Trump was insulting people left and right. That's true. He was the most bombastic president we ever had by far. But even Trump never attacked voters. He attacked politicians. He attacked public officials. He attacked private individuals. He never,
and the media.
And the media, of course, never attacked voters. So this is really something we've never seen before, and it is dark and dangerous. It's an un-Americanism that he's essentially trying to get across here, which is exactly what Senator Joseph McCarthy did in the 1950s. The difference is that there really were communists who had infiltrated American society and government. The problem is that McCarthy was such a flawed messenger that the need to eradicate communism in this country was not served well by Joseph McCarthy, and he became unhinged, and he would attack as if there was a communist under every rock. And this is exactly what Joe Biden is saying. There's a MAGA Republican under every rock. It's an otherism. He's trying to otherize, using their own term. He's trying to otherize MAGA Republicans. And it's absurd to try and make the distinction between MAGA Republicans and so-called mainstream Republicans.
Yeah.
Because 74 million people voted for Donald Trump. Now, we can try to say some of those people are MAGA Republicans, but think about it, Mark. These voters in 2020 had several choices when it came to president. They could have voted for Trump. They could have voted for Biden. They could have voted for a third-party candidate. They could have voted for nobody at all for president. They could have not voted at all for anything. So out of those five choices, okay, the people, the 74 million who chose Trump are MAGA Republicans by definition.
Yeah, very true, Tim, very true. There was no Brewster's Millions, none of the above option.
No, it's Brewster's Millions, Richard Pryor.
Absolutely. So
Great
Tim,
movie.
and John Candy, don't forget. John Candy.
Yes,
also.
John Candy too.
So Tim, we've already had senators and Congress members saying that there are MAGA extremists in the GOP. And it's eerily similar to the junior senator from Wisconsin saying, I have here a list of communists in the State Department, et cetera, et cetera. But it was really for McCarthy, it was the vagary that promoted the national paranoia. And to me, it seems that this vagary is something that the president, his press secretary, and the media are relying on to stop tying him down to what he is actually doing, which appears to be McCarthyism, pure and simple. Now, surely this is obvious, though, to most Americans, isn't it?
Well, you make an excellent point about vagary, because if you attack a group with sort of a fuzzy kind of, they're extremists.
They're semi-extremists, just semi-fascists.
Semi-fascists.
Nice folks on the weekend.
Extremists. He never used a semi with extremists. He used it only with fascists, which was actually, given the follow-up attacks, surprising that he put in the semi. Because what he's trying to do is basically, he's trying to make America paranoid again. That's MAPA, M-A-P-A, make America paranoid again. That these Trump extremists, okay, there was 1,000 people among a relatively small gathering of thousands who breached the Capitol on January 6th. And he's taking a riverboat gamble, Mark, that most Americans will associate Trump with January 6th more than they will his record in office. And I will say this, the Democrats and Biden himself must believe they really are desperate, because to go this far in the other direction, to change the focus away from their own record, is breathtaking, really. But they cannot afford to have people look at their record and to have this midterm election be a referendum on Democratic leadership. They can't afford that. So instead, they're going to attack the other side, basically saying, look, we may be terrible, but at least we're not extremists like these other people.
I mean, that was actually one of the questions I wanted to ask was, is this a sign of desperation? You pointed out quite well that they're trying to not rely on their record, because the fact is they don't really have a particularly good record, especially when you compare it to the success story of Donald Trump's first 3 years in office. I'd say it's, if you put one against the other, there are successes and there's Joe Biden. And it just doesn't match up. So they have to look for something else to focus the attention of the voter. And to me, that this really is the worst possible vice that a politician can have, to blame an electorate, half of the electorate, for the flaws of a country that he's running. What's your take?
Well, he'll do. Look, he is a career politician who's proven over 50 years, more or less, that he's willing to say anything, do anything, change any position,
plagiarize anything.
And plagiarize anything, yes. As we might recall, in 1988, his first bid for the presidency had to leave the race when several instances of plagiarism were uncovered. In 2008, he didn't even make it past the Iowa caucuses. And as I've said before, it seems like the voters, with their low approval of Joe Biden, are saying, hey, man, we got it right the first time. But look, he can't run on the Democrats' record. Inflation is a devastating thing for somebody trying to get elected. Recession, crime, immigration, those are the big issues the Democrats can be held to account on. But they're trying to simply change the subject. It's the oldest story in politics, changing the subject away from your own failures. But to go to this extent for political expedience, I think a lot of people see this as a jaw-dropping development, especially since he has doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on it since he first called Trump voters semi-fascists.
A desperate gambler in the White House. Now, we're here with Tim Donner on the new McCarthyism, Later in the show, we have our special Talking Liberty segment where we examine leftist lawyers uniting against Trump. But after this short break, we'll be back with Tim Donner to discuss a nation divided. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative Five. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe
You only
space.
did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative Five.